when I think about buying small, right, to go back to David's question, right, you have to have a little bit more of the entrepreneur vision in you to buy at that size, right? Like the business you are buying today, it is just not the business you're going to want to own forever because it's just so small and fragile, right? So you have to be willing to come in and impose your vision on this small job and turn it into a business.
My take is that this is kind of why ETA has gotten so popular among mid-career people is that they get to middle age and they realize they don't have any agency, that they truly have to be at the beck and call of whoever is above them, a boss, clients, whatever it is. And business ownership may be one of the rare careers where you truly can decide at your whim to bear the financial cost of taking your foot off the gas.
Newco Risk is a specialized insurance brokerage focused on the needs of financial sponsors, including private equity firms, independent sponsors, and search fund buyers, and the companies they acquire.
Bay Business Group is your plug-and-play finance and accounting team. They handle all the unsexy but critical accounting stuff: bookkeeping, payroll, bill pay, invoicing, and budgeting, using modern cloud tools with clean weekly and monthly reports. Small businesses do not need more fixed costs and more headcount. They need some staff accountant support, some controller support, and some CFO support.
This is what they do. All of their clients get a dedicated controller/CFO, an accountant who knows their business, meets with you regularly, and helps you make better decisions. Owned and operated by former searchers and former big PE accounting due diligence providers.
All right, welcome back to The Intentional Owner. It's me, Kaustubh Deo, with Sam Rosati as always. And how we doing?
Doing good. I know we just had a chat on a separate thing earlier. I won't give a free ad out, so I think we're warmed up and gonna jump in.
Nice. Man, I feel like I went 18 months without falling sick. I thought I had this like amazing business owner immunity for a while. And now the last like 2 months, I've been sick like every week. It's brutal.
Yeah. So first of all, if you choose to have children, you're gonna get this way at the same pace. So,
right. Well, we haven't talked about it really on the podcast at all, but I think I've told you, like Anna and I got licensed to be foster care parents, which is a new thing that, again, it's something that would not have been possible if I were still in finance. Obviously, is really only possible through the kind of the lens and freedom afforded by small business. But that is clearly part of what's happening here. So I'm spending a lot more time with little kids, and it is getting me sick constantly.
Totally. But to be clear, like you'll get immune to that over time. You'll just have caught in everything to get that immunity.
Nice. Yeah. I'm in that catch up phase right now where I'm just running the gamut of every type of illness known to man.
You just said something though. I want to flush out. Never would have been possible in finance.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
I mean, yeah, there's sort of the cliche version, right? Which is just that finance just expectations are higher around like work always comes first and it always wins out, and there's just wasn't the flexibility. I think part of it is like it's not like my small business is less important to me, right, than my work in finance. It's obviously extremely important to me, and it drives my life more than anything else in many ways. I think the big difference is really around like how much time I have available to me in terms of when I do the work. Right? Like the work still needs to get done. I mean, the best example was a few weeks ago, we had a 6-month-old for a week. It's like Sunday to Sunday, which is intense, right? Like going from like 0 to like having like no children in your life. And Anna was still caring for the 19-month-old that she works for as a nanny. Like she takes care of this baby. And so the Monday, Tuesday, she was still working. So she had the 19-month-old and we had the 6-month-old now. And it was just like, oh my God, like we suddenly have like 2 kids under the age of 2 from like 0, like moments ago. And I basically just like, it just didn't work unless I worked from home on Monday and Tuesday of that week. We just like didn't have systems set up for having this like 2 children like that. Obviously the baby she nannies for, it's a close friend's baby. So I know that child well. I can help take care of her. But the combo of having a good team now at Bluma, plus just like the work will still get done, but like nobody is sort of looking over my shoulder being like, why aren't you doing it right this instant? Like that allowed me to sort of stay home, help Anna, like kind of be a part of it at the house, and then kind of make up it later, right? That's just like not how a normal W-2 works, and definitely not how finance life works.
So I think it's really important that in finance, it was an explicit expectation that if needed, not even if needed, because it was always on, you were always on.
Yeah.
And like maybe death of a family member and some significant life events could be the exception. Were there many other exceptions?
Yeah, not much. I mean, definitely not your birthday. I've been blown up on my birthday multiple times. That's an easy give. I worked the first 3 July 4th weekends that I was in the workforce. Like just all 3. Like for some reason, my July 4th holiday, 3 years in a row, got blown up. I've done a dividend recap in my like childhood bedroom over Christmas holiday week. You know, I've done the like laptop with a hotspot on the beach at Aruba while on vacation. So no, yeah, I think death in the family and probably your own wedding. Those are probably the 2. And I think like maybe having a child. But even then, like if you're not the mom, like there's not a lot of it's not a lot of latitude given.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna articulate this well, but one of the big beliefs I have, and I read this over the weekend in an article that was like, it's not until your late 30s that people start to maybe grapple with the fact that they're midlife, not just mid career. That was the first place I was going. And so it's the first time when people start to really ask hard questions around where are they in their life? Is this like what makes them content and happy people? If not, what are the changes they can make to achieve that sort of contentedness in life? And so my take is that this is kind of why ETA has gotten so popular among mid-career people, is that they get to middle age and they realize they don't have any agency, that they truly have to be at the beck and call of whoever is above them, a boss, clients, whatever it is. And business ownership may be one of the rare careers where you truly can decide at your whim to bear the financial cost of taking your foot off the gas.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you have to be like steady every week of every month. It can actually mean you go in some serious cycles the way some of us are like born to do. I kind of work in like sprints, and then I like to take time off. Sprints, slow it down. You appear to actually be better at being kind of consistent. And so it just means though that people trade. And what's the trade-off? The trade-off is if you were to take a couple unexpected weeks off and things just kind of don't make big progressions forward, well, so what? So like you don't generate an extra 15 grand of earnings for the next few weeks.
Yep.
Who cares?
Well, so I think what's interesting is like I also work better in sprints. It's just my job requires me to be in that marathon format that we've talked about a lot. But as the business has matured, my role has now gone back to being more of a sprinter role, which is really cool. Where like the day-to-day Bluma, selling tree work, preparing for the project, sending the crew to complete the tree work, and then collecting on the invoice. Like I touch so little of that today than I used to, that by far my number one function right now is driving leads, right? And driving leads is a like you try to push hard to get the flywheel turning, and then it turns, and it's like maybe it keeps turning, or maybe you got to turn like a new flywheel, activate a new channel. Like that work of being the lead gen, the sales and marketing guy, like that actually can be a little bit more sprint oriented. And so that's like where I'm at right now is like last week I pushed hard on a couple lead channels. This week I'm not like frank, right? And I'm sick, and that's okay. But the leads are driving, and like the team is generating cash flow. And so like over time, the small business allows you to do that. But you're right, even when I was in the day to day where I was a core part of the like A to Z like service fulfillment, then it was a little bit of a function of like, how much do I want to push this given week to drive the incremental project such that we have that incremental marginal, cash flow. And it was the most tangible was actually during storms, right? Because like we would have storms sometimes, and then I would sort of be like, okay, how hard do I want to push to like go capture as much revenue from the storm as we can? And it was often a function of my energy, right? And just like what else I had going on in my life, and what I thought the team was kind of feeling up for from a kind of just emotional and energetic bandwidth. But yeah, you own it. There's no one like coming from top down being like, hey, like Storm, you got to go sell this much work.
Okay, so that is sort of the effort level. The one thing that was a challenge for me is when I quit, I remember that there were times when I could check out. I could mentally escape from my job because to a certain extent, the exogenous risks in that business were not mine to bear. Now or at least I used to have personal guarantees, and I had a harder time mentally escaping. So even though like I could do what you did, by the way, like what you did, which is like surprise your home to take care of the kids the last 2 weeks, that was COVID for us. Because if one of our kids got exposed or got COVID, or we did, we had to hunker down.
Right.
And the problem is at least at the time, we had the guarantees. All right, like, so I could take some time back from the business, but the stress of those exogenous outcomes was still mine to bear. So in a way, like, that's kind of how I frame ownership as a small business owner is you can determine the effort level as you see fit, but no matter what, the risk is yours to think about and bear.
Absolutely. And I do think over time, the size of risk or the size of like exogenous shock that would really upend the apple cart, that gets bigger and bigger, right? Like a bigger thing needs to fail for your day or your week or your month to get really blown up because you just get better at it, right? And so that makes it a little bit easier with time, right? Like we could have now like a personnel issue on crew, like two people like arguing, getting into it with each other, and like 3 years ago, like that then takes over my day because I'm managing it. I'm frontline manager. Whereas now, like I get a report about it, but I'm not the one managing it. I'm not the one sort of getting my day blown up about it. And so like that type of shock to the system is now there are enough shock absorbers in the system that I don't feel it as much. I still know it's happening and I feel it a little bit, but the size of thing that needs to go wrong has just gone bigger and bigger for me to really get impacted outside of my normal life.
That's amazing. I think I'm envious of you being there.
Do you think you ever, I mean, because you were only in your small business for a certain amount of time, like, do you feel like you ever got to that point?
No. And I didn't feel like I got to that point until PSG was on its way a few years in.
Yep.
But then we're now today, like in, I guess, my own role, we all play like more specific roles in the business. And so now I feel back to the point where if I don't show up and deliver, my role will fall apart and there won't be a P&L impact in the short run, but like huge value creation is done through M&A, and therefore like in the long run, it will be very impactful.
Totally. No, that makes sense. Yeah. And I think there's something where like I've had to start to rewire myself a little bit around like I still care, right? Like I care immensely, but I've had to rewire the care a little bit to, hey, like, if I don't set my life up in a way that keeps me in this business 10 years from now, like that's actually the most value destructive thing I can do, rather than me sort of like what feels like at times like I'm taking my foot off the gas today. Right. Like, and I'm like, ugh, like I could be driving more value right now. I could be like building this business faster or harder or more, aggressively. I've had to like figure out like, hey, like me off like by choosing not to do that today, I'm actually creating value 10 years from now because I'll still want to run this business. And that's where like basically the value generated 10 years from now by me still being in this business is so much larger than what I would generate by like driving a little bit harder today.
And so then one last thing, and then we'll kind of get to some topics that I wanted to go through today relating to like alternatives, because ETA is competitive as hell.
Yep.
And that is, I think so many of us are surprised about, maybe it's not how hard ETA is or small business ownership, but maybe like an expectations gap, the role of it, the sort of stress versus effort level differential, all of it has maybe had me question when people say they want to do this for 20 years, if that's real.
Right.
And yet, like, most of the value created is in being able to do this for a long time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, did you go into this actually thinking you would do this for the rest of your career?
I went into it thinking that that is the upside case, right? That like the best case scenario is I get into it and I enjoy it enough and it works well enough for me that I just want to do this for the rest of my life. Because like, hey, like buying the business or is the hardest part. And no, I mean it's not the hardest part, but it's a very hard part, right? And the idea of selling, like a lot of people have the idea of like, okay, I'll buy one, I'll sell it, put a point on the board and then go do a bigger deal and build that, which is, like if you can do it, that's awesome. You've kind of done that. But that's like a different kind of hard, right? Whereas like I definitely came into this with the idea of like, hey, like I am hopeful that I really enjoy this path such that I could own this business for 10, 15, 20 plus years. And I was aware that that might not work, right? And so there was a scenario in which I'd have to sell after a few years. And like I think a couple years ago, if you'd asked me, like that's where I still was. I was like, man, I don't know. This is hard. I can't see a path to this becoming sustainable. And it's only in the past sort of 18 months, maybe 2 years now that I'm like, okay, I see the sustainable path. It's starting to feel more sustainable, which means like, hey, like we grow more slowly than I expected. We don't drive the same earnings as I wanted, right? But we will get there. It will take longer but that's okay.
But also the downside risk has probably become less likely to occur, like the downside scenario or downside case.
Yes.
So it just means like the tail risks are probably less likely. And
Correct.
now you can not say take a breather, but like truly lean into the other stuff that comes up in your 30s and your 40s, because like nobody warned me how intense your 30s and what appears to be my 40s is going to be outside of the workplace, which is kind of all that mattered until I turned 30.
Totally. Like the added thing there, right, is for me, if like there's this, like it's not that work becomes less important, it stays important, but these other parts of your life become huge, right? And they take up a lot more space and time. And if you want to do them in the way you want to do them, you have to figure out how to make work fit around that. Right. And so for me, I think like as I prepare to enter that stage of my life, Bluma turning into a job I really like and I can actually do, and over time will generate the wealth outcome I want for my family. Like that's okay if it takes longer.
Agree.
Yeah.
All right. So we got a question in, by the way, like, please guys send us some questions. We love these. This is like, in large part, we are trying to generate like topics that are interesting, and we'd rather just hear from you. So I think what it related to is the other day or a couple of weeks ago, we talked about alternatives to ETA being potentially starting a business. And I don't know about you, but that conversation kind of led to a place I wasn't expecting, which is building from scratch in an industry that you're not familiar with. You're totally cold. It's
Yep.
probably as risky and unlikely to be successful
Yep.
as anything else. So maybe what that means is like lean into the advantage or the expertise you have and start there. So
Yep.
build something in a domain you understand.
Totally.
And yet I still don't think that's going to be a great answer for a lot of people because, like one of my best friends, his job is in working for a really large like health insurance company to
Mm-hmm.
build out their call centers.
Hmm.
Well, that's a pretty specific domain. And like, I think I would struggle to come up with like a small business startup in that domain. Like what would you
Right.
do? Consult maybe?
It would basically everyone starts by being a consultant, right?
Right.
You start as a consultant and then you eventually have enough demand for your consulting that you're like, how do I productize this into a business?
So what that did is it had me kind of go on a tailspin to try and figure out what alternatives to the alternative are there.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with a couple, but one of which, David, we won't call out your last name in case you want to stay anonymous. He asked, well, what if I just bought really small? And maybe we frame what really small means. He asked, what about buying something like $180,000 of seller discretionary earnings? And his assumption was for really cheap. So for like 2 times SDE. So
Yep.
I think just to frame that, it would be buying something like a $500,000 revenue business that does 180K of owner earnings
Yep.
and buying it for 350 grand, give or take.
Yep. And I know David and his wife, and that's effectively what they did, right? Like they bought a business. I don't remember exactly how big it is when they started, but around that size, and they've been running it and growing it for the last few years. And I mean, to call a spade, right? Like if you buy a business with 180K of seller discretionary earnings and almost 99.9% of those businesses requires the owner to work a full-time job and then some in that business, right? Like what you're really buying is a business that makes zero profit, right? Like it makes enough to pay you a relatively fair salary for the amount of effort you're going to put in, but not a dollar more. It doesn't make so like SDE 180K, but EBITDA's probably zero.
So to flush that out, is that a worthwhile like venture to go down? I think
Right.
that you have to continue to ask yourself. So like what can you develop that job into? And I
Right.
think if you're getting into ETA, it's because you want an ability to have control, agency, independence, right, of your time and impact. But you're also trying to create some opportunity for like a financial windfall.
Yep.
So the
Yeah.
problem is buying 180K of SDE for 2 times. That's like you probably have to grow it significantly to get the financial windfall. So how do you do that?
I think the reality is to go from what if we turn it into revenue terms, right? Like call that like a 500K revenue business,
Yep.
right? To get from 500K revenue to 2 million in revenue, where I think the next kind of plateau happens for small business,
Yep.
like you, the owner, are going to have to be the primary salesperson or service expert, right? And that's the part that I think should scare away people from this size. And if you're willing to be that person, like I think this could work, right? And like I know David, like he dug in, right? And he became like they bought residential landscaping, like he became effectively a landscape designer, right? Like you have to be able to do that. You can't hire a salesperson at that size.
Agree. So like what alternatives to the alternative would there be? I tend to use this lens, so I'll just lean into it. I do think there's an opportunity to buy, let's call it micro, a few. Now, that's not to say it will solve many problems. Like, the only thing better than one job is two. Like, you're going to have two jobs.
Right.
But I do think this starts to look like it's much easier to buy a second business in an industry once you're an owner of a first, because it's not just that you understand what you're buying into, but it also means you're likely to have the opportunity to generate more income from the same dollar of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
You've done that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I bought a business about this size as an add-on to Bluma, and that worked great, right? Because like we can immediately fold it into our existing systems and processes and our existing team, right? If this is your first acquisition, there's no systems and processes for you to come in on. So like the operative question is always like, what are you actually buying, right?
Yeah. And so the first time when you buy the starter business, you're buying a job with some capabilities. But I think from there on out, like you can actually be in a position to be buying like a book of business and whatever is generating the revenues. Maybe it's technicians or whatever. There is an entrepreneur in my town that's done this. I think he's working on right now it's either his third or his fourth. And he started by buying one and then two, and then I think a third already around this size. And so, now he's got to the point where he has a decently sized operation, and now he's sort of just buying revenue at this point.
Right.
When you bought this sized business, it's generating 180K of SDE for David, but what did it generate for you?
Yeah, for if you're buying it as a second business, right? It's going to generate much more marginal profit, right? You're basically buying gross margin when you're buying it as a second business of like revenue minus direct labor, because the hope is a lot of the behind the scenes like owner work that is effectively overhead just gets absorbed into your business, right? And so in a lot of cases, if you're buying it as a second business, the quote unquote SDE is actually gross margin for your business.
Yep.
I will say, going back to the question of like, this is an alternative to buying a bigger ETA deal, right? Like, I think it actually does make a lot of sense for a married couple, right? For like David and his wife, Nicolette, where if you're both willing to go in and kind of one of you run the business and one of you grow the business, like that I'm a lot more excited about, because it's just so small that the amount of work required to both run it and grow it is too much for one person. And so if you can make the SDE work for your family and you have enough sort of hands on deck to actually grow it, like I think there's something exciting there. But it's a very different like lifestyle choice for sure, right? And it subsumes two careers, not one.
It's a really good point. And this is a bit of a dangerous pivot, but I'll do it anyway, which is to say my wife, who's a dentist, has at this point got probably close to 10 or 12 friends who were colleagues in dental school. And they just happen to be females because obviously they're closer friends.
Yep.
They went out as dentists and sort of built up their skill set. And then what's funny is that the husbands, sort of in a host of different career paths, actually pivoted and became call it like the business managers, where what they did as a married couple is they went out and either like started or built a dental practice around the female's skill set, where she was sort of like the technician generating the revenue in the field. And in this case, the husbands would become like the business builders. They would be like driving new revenue growth channels and doing the hiring and firing and sort of like working, I don't want to say on the business, but I guess that's the analogy.
Yeah.
And that's a really good dynamic. Then you just got to be careful. Like, you're building your career in the same small business, that creates a different set of challenges.
There's a different level of risk. I mean, we're considering it right now where Anna, for her next career move, will probably try to open a daycare, and she has a ton of childcare experience. She's really well suited. She has a lot of strong feelings. Like, she is a service tech, right? She's the service level expert here. And so we're still trying to figure out, like, okay, what would my role be, if any, in supporting her in that, whether it's like a more hands-on role, like what you're describing, with the husbands and wives you've known, or more of just like a, hey, like, I'm in the background kind of providing my thoughts. I'll always do that because I'm such a peanut gallery person anyways. I can't help but throw in my 2 cents. But the question is, like, should we formalize that and actually have me be a part of it?
That's really neat. I love that. But it kind of goes back to what we talked about the other time, which is like, she has an expertise in a trade, which is childcare.
Yep.
And then she's going to turn that into an entrepreneurial journey, potentially through starting, but there's other options.
Yep. And what's interesting, I think,
That's
if you buy small, and we've talked about, like, should she go just buy a daycare, right? Like, go find a small daycare and buy it so that you can skip, because the licensing is a huge headache, right? Like, there are some real barriers to entry here, which is part of what makes it a good business. And for her, as a service level expert, she has really strong feelings about how the daycare is set up, the space, like all of that. So she's actually more, like, spiritually an entrepreneur than I am, right? Like, I'm more like, no, like, give me the business and, like, then let's go. Whereas, like, she's a true entrepreneur. But, like, when I think about buying small, right, to go back to David's question, right, you have to have a little bit more of the entrepreneur vision in you to buy at that size, right? Like, the business you are buying today, it is just not the business you're going to want to own forever, because it's just so small and fragile, right? So you have to be willing to come in and impose your vision on this small job and turn it into a business.
Yep.
And that's hard. Like, I was not a good enough business owner 3 years ago to be able to deliver a vision.
And that's okay, because now, like, in your early mid 30s, you're going to be able to do that potentially another couple times.
Correct.
Right. I kind of look at it the same way. Like, when I got into all this, I didn't know anything about managing a business, managing people, nothing. And it gives me a little bit of relief to know, like, it didn't take me 40 years, 40 more years. There'll be
Right.
time for another couple journeys to, like, take advantage of the pattern recognition we've developed now.
What is your involvement with your wife's business?
Zero whatsoever. So
Really?
my wife works for her family's dental practice that then sold to a private equity firm. So there is, well, first of all, like, it's already family, but it's sort of, my in-laws' family
Right.
and a sponsor. So
Right.
Zero whatsoever. To be clear,
Yeah,
my
so there's a
wife
lot of
is
cooks in that kitchen already. Yeah.
plenty of
Yeah.
cooks. And further, my wife is totally content having a job, a plug in, plug out
Yep.
job, because at this phase of life, that's really valuable.
Yep.
Right. We've kind of made a decision that, and it suits her, that with all of the other time, that's family time. And if you then take on the role of, like, entrepreneur, business owner, well, there's 10 more hours a week.
Totally. Does she listen to the podcast? I'm curious.
I doubt it. She, by the way, she gets, like, pinged all the time, apparently, about
Oh,
two
yeah?
things.
Okay.
One is, like, when her friends will somehow figure out, like, find their way into the ETA ecosystem and then
Yep.
see that that's where my job is,
Yep.
she'll get pings all the time. Like, wait, I had no idea that's, like, what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. It turns
the
out Sam
second
isn't a
one-
bum. It looks like he doesn't have a job, but it turns out yeah.
Oh, the second one's better.
Oh, okay.
The second one is, she'll ask if we have a piece of Rosati's pizza. Not the pizza, but the Rosati pizza franchise.
I've never heard of that. Is that an East Coast, like, pizza chain?
Yeah, just Google it. Like, Rosati's pizza, no free ads. It's a thing. And the answer is unequivocally no. We're not seeing any of that. And nor do I get free pizza.
Wow. But are you related to them?
No. Nope.
Like,
No
zero
relation.
connection.
Zero connection.
Man,
But yeah,
looks like good pizza.
it is. They have them here.
Location.
All right. So related. So this one kind of blew my mind so much that I am having the two entrepreneurs, I'll keep their names out unless you choose to disclose. They're going to come speak to our community because as we were talking about alternatives to the ETA path, realizing this was a thing and it's apparently got some traction kind of opened my mind up to the opportunity. And that is that franchises, we get this question all the time, is opening or acquiring a franchise location, being a franchisee, single, multi-unit, doesn't matter. Is that some sort of ETA adjacent opportunity that can provide people with similar levels of independence and agency and, the upside, some wealth creation opportunity that traditional ETA provides? Sorry, not self-funded ETA
Self-funded
provides.
ETA. Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's a good question.
You
Continue.
should probably talk more to them because you know them better than I do.
I mean, so there's a couple thoughts, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can do franchises, right? So, but let's put them into 4 buckets that come to mind. One is you own a franchisor, which, I think we'll talk about. The second is you own a single location franchisee. The third is you own a couple franchisees in one region, right? So you own a couple like of their territories, but it's all in one region. And then the fourth is you sort of own like a large portfolio of them, like across regions or across franchise brands, right? And so these are all different strategies at different scale, where owning the franchisor is arguably the largest. And then the second would be owning multi-franchisees across multiple states. There are a lot of those businesses that are larger than many franchisors now. And kind of in the quote unquote ETA sort of adjacent space. What is it called? Garnett Station. Those guys?
Sure
that's what they did, right? They did, I want to say Domino's. I'm going to get this wrong. Anyways, there's some big kind of former, what you would call ETA, that are now effectively like private equity firms that have built up through owning and operating franchisee, concepts. And then we have a couple examples here in Seattle. I know of guys who have bought a couple franchise locations for the same franchise, and they started to build out a little regional player. And that's a great business, right? And that's where you're really starting to run the playbook and, cleaning up the playbook of what it means to run a great business. And then the last version is you own one location and you run it, right? And that is one where you're really banking on the brand of that franchise to basically offset enough of your own marketing spend for it to be worth the royalties you pay to the brand.
And to be clear, any of these can be accomplished through either like starting a location, a unit, versus buying one, correct?
Correct. Totally. The challenge is starting a franchise location is usually a larger financial investment than doing an ETA deal.
Correct.
Not always, but usually, right? Because to start up a franchise location, you have to pay a territory fee. You have to do the build out of the location. And so I think the minimum investment size tends to be anywhere from $100K at the very low end, but more realistically, $250K to $500K, which is basically the entire equity check on an ETA deal. But you can go raise a lot of that from investors more easily, which is going to be tougher for a single location franchisee business where there's no earnings out the gate.
So, but let's hold on. So, and yet I haven't had these two entrepreneurs that own the franchisor come and speak yet, so I don't know the details, but I think what they're going to say is, well, if the startup costs are $250K, you can go get a SBA loan and finance most of those startup costs.
I think that's right. I'm not actually as well versed in this part. My sense was that amount is actually the equity injection required, but I could be wrong.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's like a gating question to figure that out.
Yeah, that's a gating question. Yeah, but because look, if you're opening a physical brick and mortar business, the
lease,
if you're buying a building, right, it's obviously way more. But even if you're doing a lease, right, the lease is effectively financing, right? And so you need to have a lot of capital on the balance sheet to do the build out of the lease of the new facility and pay dead rent for a while until you're starting to generate any revenue. And so it's tough to finance much more because there's no cash flow to support it.
All right, so I think that's true. What also opened my mind, because I never took the time to really think through the various like industries that you can franchise in, and we just
Oh yeah.
or I naturally go to like food service as the key opportunity in franchising, and then in the last handful of months, I've seen opportunities around early childhood education.
Totally.
I've seen like these car repair plus oil change facilities. I've seen all sorts of non-food service related franchising opportunities.
Yep.
That are pretty darn interesting.
Oh yeah, they're everywhere, right? Like you've got there's tree care franchises. It's called Monster Tree Care.
Right.
They have franchise locations around the country. That, like basically every service trade has a franchise option now. And so like the real question is the royalty fee to the franchisor worth it? Right. And that's a difficult question to answer, and is largely a function of how successful is that brand and how well known or understood is it. But like if you're paying a 6% of revenue royalty, like 6% is usually the marketing budget for a lot of small businesses, right? 6% of revenue, anywhere from 6 to 10%.
Yep.
And so it's like, okay, like is the being in the franchise equivalently good to you basically spending zero on marketing? It's a hard, it depends. In some cases, yes. In some cases, no.
Well, I don't think you'll ever find out like the answer to that question. So what you'll have to do is comp against like what do franchisees generate on average, right? And I think this is all generally available info in an FDD. So
Yep.
you'll see that, but it's like, what do top quartile, top half? Well, and you should assume that you're going to be average and not top quartile. Like, what
Yep.
are the economics on a unit? And it's like, well, if if a median franchisee generates $1.5 million of revenue and 400 grand of owner earnings, and you can get into that opportunity for X dollars and Y leverage, like it starts to pencil an awful lot like a normal ETA deal.
Correct. And I do think, though, part of this is you have to really understand what the franchisor cares about, right? And do they want you to build the business as a financial asset, or do they want you to just be an owner operator forever, right? And then when you're done being an owner operator, you have to sell. And like kind of the prototypical example is Chick-fil-A. Like Chick-fil-A does not allow you to own more than one franchise location, and they require you work in it, right? Like they are very clear about their vision for what a franchise. It's not really even a franchisee. It's like almost more like a license holder. I don't know. But at the other end of the spectrum, there's like Planet Fitness, right? The gyms where they used to, I mean, that's a public stock, the franchisor, and they used to report what percentage of their franchisees are owned by private equity firms as a like proof of concept, showing like, hey, like our franchisee locations are so strong that PE firms want to buy them as financial assets, right? And like that's how that franchisor looked at their system, as like, we want franchisees to really build these as their own economic powerhouses, which is very different than what like Chick-fil-A, they're saying like, hey, no, like we are protecting the brand to the upteenth whatever, right? And like you, the franchisee, have to run it exactly our way, and you have to show up every day and run it, which is great for like, it's still a great job, right? But it's a different thing than an ETA deal.
So then how would you suggest like thinking through those four, what do you want to call it? But it's not four buckets, but four sort of
Yeah.
like stages or levels of ownership. Yeah.
Yeah. Like how do you think about it as an ETA acquirer?
Yeah. Well, this is all about alternatives to self-funded search. So I don't think you want to get into this thinking that you're going to own like a national multi-brand, multi-location holding company. That might end up where you get, but I don't think that's where you start. You have to be sufficiently content with a more modest outcome.
Correct. Yeah, so I think like let's say starting with the biggest, right? Owning a franchisor, that is a deal size that is generally outside the scope of ETA. Obviously, we know somebody who's done it. That's why we're talking about it. But like that does require a certain level of M&A complexity and financial sophistication and deal size that is usually outside the scope of self-funded search. So I'm
Yep.
setting that aside. Same for kind of the large, like multi-region, multi-unit, kind of multi-flag franchise holding company.
Yep.
So I think what we're really talking about is buying one franchisee location versus buying, trying to buying a few territories in one region. And to me, the difference between those two is really like, what are your goals as an owner, right? And basically like building a regional champion as an independent business or as a franchisee business. Like the big difference there is like with franchisee, you're limited by territory. And that's usually like a zip code or like a county or whatever, right? And so if you want to expand naturally the way my Blue Mud Tree business will expand naturally geographically, you have to buy new territories, right? So that's just, I think like almost everyone who wants to build a business that is going to be to that kind of 5 to 10 million of revenue and really be like more of a owner and less of an owner operator over time, like you kind of have to assume you're going to build to a multi-location business.
And I don't disagree. Can I also say that I think the type of franchise greatly matters?
Oh yeah.
So, like, I'm pretty sure Domino's is a franchise. Yeah, right. Domino's franchisees
Yeah.
are
I'm
who
actually not sure if Domino's is, because Domino's was acquired by Bain Capital. They did a big turnaround on it. So I don't know. Now I'm curious. It's sort of surprising to see what chains are and aren't. Like
opening a
Starbucks is,
Domino's franchise requires an initial investment ranging from 156,000 to 743. Okay,
okay, so they are franchisees, whereas
it sounds like they
Starbucks
are.
is all corporate owned.
Correct. But I think what I'm saying is the food service comparison aside, so sorry, I just can't come up with a better comp. But if you want to become a entrepreneur of an enterprise as a franchisee of Domino's Pizzas or Dunkin' Donuts, you almost by definition will need to own multiple units. You almost by definition will have to start as like the regional manager at worst, at best, at worst, you're going to be a location manager, but
Yep.
you're going to have, I don't know what it is. I'm just sort of spitballing here, 3 to 10 locations to have enough revenue and enough of P&L bandwidth to hire teams to sort of build like the infrastructure and life that you have at Bluma. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And yet, I think and maybe the same is the case for like these oil change centers. And, we're talking about units that probably produce between $500,000 and $1 million of revenue per unit, is my guess.
Yeah.
But there are tons of concepts where a single unit generates, $3 to $10 million of revenue.
In which case, fine, you just need one.
In which case, you can be perfectly content with the life and the economic opportunity in just owning one and not have grander visions. And then really what you have is like proof of concept in the franchise brand and just an extra COGS line item that's a cost of doing business.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like when I think about in Seattle, to give you an actual example that isn't food service, but one of my entrepreneur friends here, he has now owns 2 territories of Molly Maid for like residential home cleaning.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And the same thing, like I think as others come up for sale because franchisee owners are retiring, like he is the natural buyer of them. Right. And so like that's an example of how you can naturally expand with this franchise concept. And then the flip side is actually Lisa Forrest, who you and I know well.
Yeah.
Her husband, I don't know if you know this, but her husband has owned a grease monkey for like 20 plus years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they own this grease monkey out in Snoqualmie, and they've owned it for I think like more than 2 decades now.
Wow.
But it's a one location, and it's a good business, and it's a good it's what he does. He's mostly retired now, but they still own it. Yeah,
I'm thinking of more like names that are non-food service. Like there's Mathnasium. There's like a lot of these educational concepts.
Yeah, like Bright
There's-
Horizons, I think, is a franchise model. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, gyms, there's a lot of fitness studio models. I mean, I looked a little bit when I was searching, like there was one I considered that does like kids summer camps, right? Like that type of thing. Like if you can think of an industry, there's probably a franchise serving it. You just have to decide if it's actually worth it or not for you.
Here's one. I mean, Fantastic Sam's.
What's that?
It's a hair care. It's like a barber.
Oh, sad. Well, and actually one that I've noticed pretty common is there's actually a lot of independent plumbing companies that will then launch, I think, Roto-Rooter within their business, or like other sewer type. Like they'll launch one of their service verticals through a franchise system, even though their primary trade is independent. And I think I've seen that with irrigation also, like basically like very specific trades that are hard to get into without some knowledge. Like if you're a landscaper and you want to add irrigation, you can probably add just irrigation through a franchise.
Interesting.
I think there is a lot there. And I'm not saying that it's the answer for anybody struggling to get a business acquired, but I'm guessing a lot of people have just sort of brushed it aside for dogmatic reasons or rules of thumb that maybe they should reconsider.
And interestingly, there is in our Seattle SMB ETA group, there is a franchise consultant. Her name's Sandy. Like, and I've spoken to a couple others when I was in the search process, and like, they're kind of like a broker for franchises, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
they have an incentive obviously to get you placed with a franchise because they get paid by the franchises for placing you.
Yep.
So you still have to make your own investment decision and all that, but like they kind of will work for free with you to figure out, is there a franchise model trying to open up in your area? This is for greenfielding generally, that could be a good personal fit. So that's kind of an interesting approach that I'm surprised more ETAers don't, at least dig into a little bit more deeply, even if it's, if it's only a good fit for like 5% of searchers. I don't think like 5% of search deals right now are franchises.
I tell you what would be interesting. Maybe we'll see if anybody would bite on this. Is there are franchises in each of our industries.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be fun to like go into the FDD? Like for us, it's Superior Fence and Rail. For you guys, it's the brand you just mentioned.
Yeah,
and
Monster.
like just kind of look at the unit economics of the average and top quartile franchisees.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a fun idea. I got to get my hands on it. I know 2 of the franchisees, so I can probably get my hands on it. By the way,
Interesting.
one of the most interesting deals I've seen actually in tree care was this. It's over on the East Coast. There was a corporate-owned location for Monster, and they wanted to sell it back out into the franchise system because it was just sort of like it was like mismanaged. It wasn't really a focus, right? Because the franchisor is being a franchisor, they don't actually want to have corporate stores, and so they actually bought out the corporate store from them and turned it back into a franchisee, and they've been doing quite well with it, from what I can tell.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you know Kevin Henderson. He and his wife bought a B2C auto wraps business from the franchisor to be like an early franchisee.
Yep, another good example. So it's out there. So I think, whether you're buying small, whether you're starting, whether you're buying a franchisee, there are some interesting alternatives here to the bread and butter, like 500K EBITDA for 3 to 4x with an SBA loan deal, which obviously like that's what we talk about the most.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, Kaustubh, I think that's it for today. We are going to kind of get back into some, call it like owner operator topics over the next few weeks. So that'll be fun.
Newco Risk is a specialized insurance brokerage focused on the needs of financial sponsors, including private equity firms, independent sponsors, and search fund buyers, and the companies they acquire.
Bay Business Group is your plug-and-play finance and accounting team. They handle all the unsexy but critical accounting stuff: bookkeeping, payroll, bill pay, invoicing, and budgeting, using modern cloud tools with clean weekly and monthly reports.
Small businesses do not need more fixed costs and more headcount. They need some staff accountant support, some controller support, and some CFO support.
This is what they do. All of their clients get a dedicated controller/CFO, an accountant who knows their business, meets with you regularly, and helps you make better decisions. Owned and operated by former searchers and former big PE accounting due diligence providers.